What's going on, everyone? Today I'm here with Linda Sarsour, and she is very prominent in her community. Some of you who followed Bernie Sanders probably saw her on the campaign trail as well, doing some justice for Bernie Sanders. Unfortunately, he did not make it. A lot of people is very upset by that, and we probably want to ask Linda about her feelings about that as well. But Linda, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, brother. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. Linda, for those who don't know much about you, can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
I'm a Palestinian Muslim American, born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. I'm a racial justice and civil rights activist. I run a nonprofit organization in New York City, just kind of traveling the country, training Muslim organizers and getting more Muslims involved in larger social justice movements. That's my work.
Now we hear the word social justice, and it seems like to some people that when you fight for social justice, it's like a curse word. Have you gotten that told to you before? That, oh, you just a social justice warrior?
Oh, I've gotten told many things, brother, beyond maybe worse things I can't even mention on your show. But yes, social justice activists and those who dare criticize U.S. government and their policies, people who dare talk about Black Lives Matter, and others have been vilified as unpatriotic, un-American. And I actually think those who stand up and push our country to be the greatest nation on earth are actually the most patriotic of our country. So, yes, I've been vilified for just being a racial justice and civil rights activist.
Now, with the rise of Donald Trump, right now they're having a convention in Cleveland, and with all his rhetoric, because they love to say that when we speak up against white supremacy or police brutality, and we have our rhetoric, why is it that Donald Trump could bring in all this Islamophobia, and I definitely like to say the term blackphobia as well. He bring that in. Why is it nothing is said about that? Because the people who follow him, and he said this, he loved uneducated people. There's a lot of uneducated people that follow him, and now they're attacking Muslims. They're trying to do things to black people as well. What is it with Donald Trump that's galvanized the white supremacists to come out in full force now?
I think that what people think that Donald Trump, exposed something new in our country. I mean, racism has been deeply embedded, and we have seen the marginalization, ostracization of Black people in this country for centuries. And it's unfortunate that people think that Donald Trump is a new phenomenon. I actually see Donald Trump as someone who pulled back the covers on racism in this country and white supremacy. And we see Black phobia, as you call it, or anti-Black racism, and Islamophobia as acceptable. I mean, Islamophobia, you can call Muslims terrorists, you can vilify an entire faith community, and nothing happens to you. There are no consequences. And Donald Trump is playing on the fears of ordinary white folks, including very poor white folks in rural America. And it's very unfortunate. I actually think that the majority of those people are good people. They're people who care about income inequality, people who want to make it in this country, people who are worried about education, but are being folded into this larger fear around national security based on the rhetoric that Trump is being advised to engage in. I don't even think Donald Trump believes half the things that he says, but there are people advising him, telling him this is the way that you're going to win by playing into the fears of ordinary people and ordinary Americans in this country. And what we got to do together is we got to make this type of racism unacceptable. And the reason why it continues to happen is because it's still acceptable amongst the majority of people who continue to sit on the sidelines and really not engage in a very honest conversation.
Yeah, we at a point, I feel that you got to speak up now. And I said this to some people in the white community. Either you are against racism and white supremacy or you for it. And silence means consent, period.
Mm-hmm.
We're not at a time period that you could just stay silent anymore because unfortunately, you have those who don't agree with it, but they're backdoor and they probably email you about it and tell you that they don't agree. Or they tell me as well. So, I don't agree with it, but yet why don't you publicly speak out? I mean, it's totally wrong. But in the Muslim community, when Donald Trump had presented this ban, how did people within your community initially react to this?
I think people were initially outraged. And I think to your point, people will say, Linda, don't worry. This is unconstitutional. You know, Donald Trump can't ban Muslims. He can't register Muslims in databases. You guys are exaggerating. And what my community understands is we understand American history. We understand that we had laws in this country that banned the Chinese called the Chinese Exclusion Act. We know that in this country there has been registration of people in databases, particularly Muslims back in 2003 in a program called the Special Call-in Registration Program, where Muslim men were asked to come register with the U.S. government post 9/11. We know that we've had internment camps in this country. Like, that's something we've done. Segregation is something that not only did we historically do, but we still do in many cities across the country, including in places like New York and Detroit and Chicago, where we have some of the most segregated education systems in the country. So people keep trying to reassure me that don't worry, nothing's going to happen. But I don't know how reassured I am. And to your point about the silent majority, I was doing a lecture at a university in Ohio, and a young Muslim student stood up and said, Sister Linda, I got a question to ask you. Who were the people who were living in this country at the time of Japanese internment? You know, who were those good people that sat back and allowed their Japanese sisters and brothers to be picked up with their children and put into camps on U.S. soil? And I think the brother was really asking your question. That the majority of Americans, I believe, are good people. And I believe the majority of Americans at the time of Japanese internment were good people. But I don't need you to be a good person that's silent and doesn't agree. I need you to be a good person that's going to stand up and say, not on my watch, I'm not going to allow that to happen. So the question I have for people now is, are you going to have young people 30 years from now ask who lived at the time of the Donald Trump fascism era? You know, who sat back and who stood up? And I think I want to make sure that people feel like they want to be part of the legacy of the people who actually stood up to Donald Trump and the factions that support him.
Now, you know, you look at the mainstream media, which galvanizes all this propaganda, who moves it around, who travels it just all over the country. And we notice that the only time that if something happens to a police officer, if it's a Muslim or if it's a black person, as of recent, then all of a sudden we need to have the flags half staff. We need to say, come up with new laws that I don't even know why they're trying to come up with new laws for, because you touch a cop is more of a penalty than touching me or you. Okay, so that's more so political. So when white suspects kill police officers, you never hear anything. You never hear we love our police. You never hear about, you know, the American flag with that one blue line in it. You never hear that. So, and I know you noticed that just as much as I've noticed that, because you had a white suspect kill two law enforcement officers in a courtroom in Michigan just last
Yeah, just
week,
recently. Yep.
and we ain't heard nothing about it. But all
Nope.
we hear is the two that the black person has done.
Yeah,
Now,
I mean, yeah.
go
I
ahead.
mean, obviously, you know, none of us justify the killing of any innocent people. I don't justify the killing of unarmed black people on the streets of their communities, nor do I justify the killing of police officers. But every time there's some sort of mass shooting or there's some sort of, quote, terrorist attack in this country, and if the perpetrator is a Muslim or a black person, immediately we start delving into the vilification of all black communities, right, or the vilification of all Muslim communities. And sometimes those communities are not mutually exclusive. So as you know, a third of Muslims of the Muslim community is African American. And we also start vilifying the corpse of dead bodies. So when we kill an unarmed black man, all of a sudden we start hearing about his rap sheet and what he did 20 years ago, 10 years ago. This idea that we want to justify the murders of people of color in this country. And also when terrorist attacks are being perpetrated by white folks, you don't hear people saying, you know, we don't want to call it terrorism. They're very apprehensive to call something terrorism when it's committed by a white person. The minute we know it's a Muslim, immediately all other factors, motivations are ruled out, and immediately it's a terrorist attack. There's like Muslims can't have mental health issues. They can't have, you know, workforce, work violence issues. Maybe somebody was retaliating. I mean, there's a lot of motives when people go out and kill innocent people. But when it comes to Muslims, we can't, it has to be terrorism. No other way around it. And I think it's the media sees that as a story. The fact that we continue to play videos of unarmed black men and women being killed on national television. Did you ever see us watch videos of white people being killed? And I would never want to see either. White people, Asians, I don't want to see people getting murdered over and over in loops on national television. And that's something that we really need to look at. I've noticed it. And I've been actually attacked for calling it hypocritical, and calling it out many times on social media and on national television.
Yes, ma'am, because the dehumanization of everyone else outside of white America is what we're looking at. Because, like you said, we can't have a mental problem. We can't have a workplace incident. We took the same approach that they took. When we do something or Muslims do something, then why isn't they having said, okay, let's ban white males out this country? Then you had a white male to try to make an attempt on Donald Trump's life recently. And they haven't said, okay, well, we need to ban all white males from coming to the country until we figure out what the hell is going on.
We had a former white congressman, Walsh, threaten the president of the United States of America on Twitter. He deleted his tweet, but of course, people on social media screenshotted it. The fact that you can have a former sitting congressman threaten the president of the United States, regardless of what race he is absolutely outrageous and unbelievable to me. I think what you see on the streets and what people are calling for is we're calling for a justice system that works for everybody, that we should not be applying laws differently for different people. I want everybody to have due process. If you're black, white, Asian, Muslim, if you violate the law, all of us should have due process. We should be in a court of law and we should stand to defend ourselves. But it looks like that's not available to everybody. And then people say, well, why don't you let the justice system do its job? And we tell people all the time that a lot of communities are not seeing justice, including black communities, where I haven't seen a recent story of any police officers who've been held accountable for the murder of unarmed people. We just watched the Freddie Gray case just this week. Another police officer walked free after murdering an unarmed man. I mean, we watched Eric Garner in right here in my city in Staten Island choked on video for the whole world to watch, and a police officer still has his job. Ramali Graham, Rakia Boyd. I mean, I could sit here for days naming people who've been killed at the hands of law enforcement, and no law enforcement officials being held accountable. So people don't believe that the justice system works. So the question is, either we make the justice system work for everybody, or you're going to have people in the street continuing to call on reform, call on some people are calling many things, right? But I think one thing that I do know for sure is that the justice system doesn't work for everybody.
And how they insult us as human beings. We sit here and watch a video, literally, of Eric Garner getting choked out, or we'll watch, Philando Castile or Alton Sterling, and they will say to us, "Well, you guys don't know what happened 1.3 milliseconds before the video was shot." But if it's the other way around and we done something, oh no, we don't need to see no video. You automatically guilty. Also in Louisiana, they had a case some months back where you had two black police officers. You had a white father run away from them. They chased him down, and then they ended up shooting at this father in the car, and they killed the 6-year-old boy. Now, they didn't go home on administrative leave. They didn't get to sit home. They immediately charged them, fired them, and put them in jail, waiting for trial. But with Alton Sterling's killer, they didn't do that. Right in Louisiana.
I mean, people are getting paid vacation. I mean, when Eric Garner case happened, you had somebody like Officer Daniel Pantaleo from the New York Police Department who had basically kind of like a paid vacation waiting to see what was going to happen with the case. And they gave desk duty. And believe it or not, my taxpayer dollars also pay for him to have private security because he's acting like, his life is in danger now. We also have Officer Haste who killed Ramali Graham in the Bronx, a young boy in the Bronx, who actually got a promotion from the New York Police Department. This is the kind of treatment that police officers are getting for killing unarmed people. The question is, if police officers are seeing that they can kill people with impunity and not get held accountable, what makes them not stop and think and say, maybe I don't want to take this life right now? Similar to the Tamir Rice case. You had a little 12-year-old boy playing with a toy gun in a park, and in the 911 call, the woman says, I don't know if it's real. It might be a toy gun. And the cops don't even get out of the car. They kill him before the car even stops driving. We all watched that video. So I have a problem also with people who say the solution to this problem is body cameras, right? I watched videos of people getting killed on TV, and they're still not held accountable. Why are body cameras the solution to police accountability? Even in some states like North Carolina, the governor wants to actually limit access to videos of body cameras to the public. What's the point of having body cameras if you're telling me that the public won't have access to those videos to be able to see whether or not those cops engaged in, use of excessive force or not? And when I watched that video of Philando Castile in particular, when I watch a little 4-year-old girl in the back seat and a police officer can shoot a man and no AMT shows up, and there's a little girl consoling her mother, that is a shame, a black stain on all of America that we sat back and watched that happen. I mean, when I heard of the Tamir Rice case, the minute we allow a 12-year-old boy playing in a park die and no one held accountable, that is a shame on all of us, honestly.
Yeah, it really is. I said something on Twitter about America. I say, what's happening to America is this whole country is turning into Gotham City. You're pretty sure you know about Batman in Gotham City, right? You have, in Gotham City, the police is corrupt, the politicians is corrupt, the criminals are running the politicians and the police, and so you start breeding all these vigilantes, and that's how Batman shows up. So when you don't have a system of justice, what's happening in America, now you're starting to have these vigilantes show up. And people don't realize that, but they're birthed out of corruption. When you keep seeing these police officers getting off, and you watch how the system's fixed, like Baltimore is showing me how they're getting off. Like, yeah, we may get a grand jury indictment, but what we're going to do is bench trials, because it's just what the judge say at that point, not a trial by jury. And every last cop got a bench trial, and that's how they're getting off. And it's ridiculous. You watch.
Oh, absolutely.
So I guess Freddie Gray just snapped his own neck, right?
Yeah, I mean, I saw a tweet that I thought was, a tongue-in-cheek and snarky, but I thought it had some truth to it. They said, who are we going to charge next? The van? Did the van kill him? Like, are we going to have an automotive charge? Like, it's really sad to see what keeps happening around the country. And when you talk about vigilantes, I mean, I want to add George Zimmerman to that case. We have folks that want to patrol their communities, right, and act like their neighborhood watchmen, like George Zimmerman. I mean, he himself is a vigilante. So the vigilantes aren't just coming out of communities of color based on an injustice system. They're also white folks who think that they can do a better job than the police. They take matters into their own hands. They have laws like Stand Your Ground that only apply to them. And then they get off, like George Zimmerman did with Trayvon Martin. But then we had the woman, the black woman, who also, felt like the Stand Your Ground law in Florida was going to protect her. And you saw her case went on for at least a few years before she ended up getting off. I can't remember her name right now, but many people know her story. My thing is, like, if you're going to have a law, it either applies to everybody or applies to nobody. And I think that communities of color, are justified when they call on the justice system and say that this is an injustice system because it's not applied to everyone the same.
Yeah, the sister's name was Marissa Alexander, the one you was talking about.
Yeah, Marissa Alexander,
Florida.
exactly.
But what people don't understand is, like, especially some in white America, when you could watch a child, let's say like Trayvon Martin, get gunned down, and you sitting here watching people not only celebrate this, but giving the murderer hundreds of thousands of dollars, close to $500,000. You seeing him being sympathized on Fox News, like he's the victim, but yet he killed someone. Same thing
with Darren Wilson.
Same thing. And I told, and after George Zimmerman got off, it was like the white supremacists say, "Oh, we can go back to killing them wholesale openly now." And notice after Trayvon Martin, that's when you start seeing it get worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, I mean, we're also starting to see these armed militiamen, guys with, open carry states showing up in front of mosques, right? Trying to intimidate worshipers. I mean, in this country, my understanding is it was founded on this idea of religious freedom, that I should be able to worship without intimidation. I can worship whatever I want, how I want. And now in parts of the country, watch these white militias showing up with these AK-47s, intimidating worshipers, and people say, well, this is freedom of speech, right? I say that's cool if that's freedom of speech and freedom of assembly. I'm all about that. But what about my freedom to worship freely? What about the freedom of Muslims and other people to be able to worship freely in this country? I mean, when you watch the Dylan Roof, right? You walk into a church, you sit for an hour, people are hospitable to you, you join Bible study, and an hour later you shoot him, right? And then he gets arrested, and because the poor young white man was hungry, they took him to Burger King. I mean, the way that he was being treated by the justice system in comparison to if we had a guy of another race walking into a church, over and over again, we watch these cases that reconfirms for me that the system doesn't treat us all equally.
No, and that's why when we say, when you have the complexion for the protection, then you don't understand how things feel. to us. And a lot of people aren't comfortable knowing that we just getting to a point that we're tired. We're so tired now that, they're having a great movement that I'm loving. The bank black movement, where everybody's starting to move their money to black owned banks. And because we can't keep funding our oppression, because these police departments are funded by your tax dollars and my tax dollars and
Mm-hmm.
through these corporations. So we have to do what Martin Luther King told us to do a day before he was assassinated, is to take our money out of those banks and go put it in our own banks. That's what we're going to have to do within your community, my community, until they realize you're going to have to respect us. You can't keep killing us
Yep.
wholesale.
There's actually a campaign right now that's run by some people that I respect dearly called No Equality, No Economy. And that's the hashtag, and people can look it up. And basically, what they're asking people to do is take your money out of major corporation, major retailers. Like, there are plenty of black owned business, immigrant owned businesses that you can support. You don't need to go to these big major corporations who are benefiting and profiteering off of mass incarceration and a lot of other issues that impact our communities. I listen to Nation of Islam folks, and I'll say this: they say sometimes they be making a lot of sense, and I really nod my head a lot about this idea of the power of the dollar, right, and the power of black money in this country. One of the largest consumer population. Really, this country would stop working if black people said one day we're just not going to invest at all in any part of this country. We're not going to buy from corporations. We're going to pull our money out of the banks. It would literally not be able to function. So my friend said something that I thought was really insightful. She said, if you're not going to care about our lives, well, you're going to care about our dollar. And we live in a country where money and power, unfortunately, trumps, no pun intended, trumps the value of life. So I think I'm with you, brother. Like, we got to start letting people respect us. And if that means we're going to have to pull our money, then that's the way we got to do it.
Yeah, because they tell us all the time we should be like Dr. King, and he will roll over in his grave to watch what you guys are doing, and because I'm black, because I'm in Black Lives Matter. I know I was put in that group, So and I think we do need to take the model of Dr. King. Now I've noticed online. You've been doing a lot of work, with the young people with Black Lives Matter. How's that experience has been for you working with them?
Black Lives Matter is a network of people across the country, people who believe in the sanctity of black life and sanctity of all life. So when people say Black Lives Matter, they want to affiliate you with one particular organization, but really what it is a mantra. And I'm tired of defending why I and others believe that Black life matters in this country. Obviously, it doesn't matter, right? Which is why these young people are screaming at the top of their lungs and going out into the streets to basically uh, I think they're trying to shake the moral conscience of our country. Like, look us in the eye and tell us that we matter. And that while they watch young people and old people in their communities being killed in their own neighborhoods, right, in front of their own stores, and they're on the streets of their communities. So, what I keep telling people about these young people is that they want to live, and to continue to malign and vilify them, especially in the context of the killing of police officers. How can anyone believe, and how offensive it is to believe that people who are telling you we want to live, people who are telling you stop killing black people, will actually justify the murders of other innocent people? That's not the movement. The movement is of angry, and I think it's righteous anger at the continued, what they feel like is the continued targeting, continued vilification of their communities and who they are, and really their black skin. They can't stop being black. They can't wake up one morning and be like, okay, I'm a white progressive and I'm not going to be part of this movement. They wake up black every morning, and really, I have learned so much from them. They call it radical love. They love their people. They love black people. They love their allies, and their whole point of Black Lives Matter is sanctity of life. Just give people the chance to live with dignity and respect. That's what they're asking for. I don't think it's much, but unfortunately in our country, people think that's too much, that we should be asking that all people be treated with dignity and respect.
Well, within the black community, that's considered special treatment. We want something different because they raised to feel that they should keep their foot on our necks, and that's the position that we need to be. We need to know our place. And we even recently heard Donald Trump come out to say that Black Lives Matter is a threat, and he getting off is something going to be done about it. I was like, well, what are you going to do? Black Lives
Hmm.
Matter was smart enough to not form a group. So you can't do the deal of, well, I'm going to strike the shepherd and the sheep going to scatter. You can't do that. I've seen people, they have Black Lives Matter in the UK now. They got Black
Hmm.
Lives Matter in Canada now. What are you going
Yep.
to do? It's an idea.
Absolutely. It's let me tell you, what I see that's different now than I see in past decades is that these young people have no loyalty to any political party. They don't have loyalty to elected officials. They got loyalty to nobody. They got loyalty to the communities that they come from, loyalty to their families, loyalty to black people. But really what they believe and I believe in, why people ask me, Linda, you're not black, like why are you down with this? And I say to people, listen, what's happening to Muslims right now, like I can't fight against Islamophobia. I can't fight for the rights of my communities if black people in this country are not free. And I tell people that the liberation of black people in America will lead to the liberation of all people in the United States of America and really beyond, right? Including immigrants and undocumented immigrants and Native Americans and others. So what people have to understand is that these young people are going to risk, and they're ready to risk it. And you watch them take risks across the country. They are young, intellectual, strategic young people in all parts of this country. So they are our modern day civil rights leaders. You may not like their tactics, you may not like their strategies. And let me remind you this, back in the days in the civil rights movement, about 61% of Americans did not agree with Martin Luther King. They did not agree with the freedom rides or with the bus boycotts. So people forget history and want to tell me about Dr. Martin Luther King. Dr. Martin Luther King had a dream, and these kids are trying to continue the legacy of fulfilling his dream. They might not be doing it like him, but they have other resources and tools that are at their side.
Well, see, they love the Dr. King that you just said, the dreamer Dr. King. They didn't like the revolutionary Dr. King the last 2 years of his life. But that's the reason why he really got killed. Talking about the mass boycotts, pulling money out of their
Mm,
banks, doing that sort of thing. Speaking up against the war and why poor people should be fighting a politician's war. They don't want to hear that
yeah.
sort of thing. You know.
And Martin Luther King also was a victim of police brutality. Martin Luther King wrote us a letter from the Birmingham jail, like this idea that Martin Luther King was some untouched, civil rights hero that we all protected as Americans. I mean, the guy was beaten by the police. He was put in jail multiple times, right? He was vilified. They called him a threat to our country, right? He was like groups that he was working with were maligned and put on blacklists in this country. But people don't want to tell you that. They want to tell you how we got a day off in January and how, we got a monument up in Washington, D.C. And let's remember, probably around our age. I mean, he was assassinated at the age of 39. He was a young man, and we white supremacy killed him. So like we forget those parts of the story.
Yeah, they definitely won't never tell the truth. Now, with the rise of this, we just had here in Houston, we had a doctor going to the mosque, and he was attacked, and he was shot. And I heard of a case in Brooklyn that two, you may correct me if I'm wrong, two Muslim young men were attacked or stabbed or something
Hmm.
like that. You familiar about that case?
In front of the mosque, they were beaten to the point of like panda black eyes.
So we seen all these attacks. We saw a video where these white supremacists say they was dipping their bullets in pig's blood and all this
Hmm.
other stuff. And like you was talking about them coming in front of mosques, they had a confrontation like that happen here in around the Dallas area. But the Huey P. Newton Gun Club and the New Black Panther Party showed up in force too with guns and ran them off. So we keep seeing this stuff and I want to know, like, people within your community, are they feeling, real uneasy? They feeling scared? I mean, how are they feeling about seeing this, this attack against your religious, preference and freedoms?
Of course, it keeps people uneasy. I mean, women who look like me, walking around sometimes in train stations. I mean, I've watched a lot of young women give each other safety tips online, like don't stand too close to the train platforms, don't leave college campuses at night, always have somebody with you. Like, we live in the United States of America. We're supposed to live in a country where there is safety, where we're supposed to feel safe, and people don't feel safe in our community. The fact that people are watching these hate crimes happen. We've had a few in the Bronx just within the last few weeks. We hear of these cases across the country, people being beat up outside of the mosque, people shooting at the mosque, people sending threats to the mosque. And like I said earlier, it seems to be acceptable because ain't really nobody getting in trouble for it. I mean, we watch pundits on national television, radio show hosts, engaging in vilification and incitement against Muslim communities, and no one's getting fired for it. So people are really feeling uneasy in the Muslim community. And I think that's sad that a lot of these people are also children of immigrants or immigrants themselves. They left police states, they left violence, they left conflict, war. They thought they were coming to the United States of America that was going to embrace them and love them and tell them you could be free here. And now they're afraid for their lives. Like, this is not the kind of country that we're supposed to be the greatest nation on earth, forcing democracy down the throats of people all over the world. And here we are in our country. We have segments of our community who are afraid to live. And we need to be able to protect everybody in this country. Everybody deserves to feel safe. White, black, Asian, Muslim, I don't care what religion you are. We all deserve to live with dignity, respect, and in safety.
They like to talk about, Muslims and, terrorism and all this other stuff like that, but yet, under the guise of their false version of Christianity, they have killed millions of people. They have stolen resources. They're constantly doing it to this day. So how is it a lot of them a lot better than so-called Muslims?
I mean, there's some recent studies that came out. I remember New America Foundation last year came out with a study that, outside of the attacks on 9/11, more terrorist attacks have been committed by white men than actually Muslims, right? But we don't talk about that. And we're talking about in the course of the past 20 years. We need a boogeyman in this country. We always have to take this one group and vilify it. And Muslims have been the easiest target, where we use national security as a stamp of approval to strip Americans of their civil liberties, whether that includes mass surveillance, NSA spying, no, over-bloated no-fly lists, terror watch lists. And we use constantly tell the American people, look, people, we got to violate the rights of some people so you guys can all have the freedoms of liberties that you want. We also blame terrorists by saying, they hate us for our freedoms, right? But let's remember that, we as the United States of America have engaged in unjust wars that have killed at least 1 million Muslims, in two unjust wars in the Middle East, as you know, in Iraq and Afghanistan, that also took the lives of at least 12 to 13,000 American soldiers. And we knew not to go in Iraq in the first place, but we still went in there. So we have to understand that the way we act in the world and our foreign policy directly has ties in terrorism that we're seeing right now, that our foreign policy is a factor.
So, Linda, you do a show. What is your show about on the network that you're doing on, and what kind of guests do you normally bring on?
The Sarsour show, and it's online on Goodcast TV, and it's an Arab Muslim-owned media platform. And my show is a political commentary show. It's really about talking about the current events and current issues from the perspective of an Arab American, a Muslim American, and a woman, and an American. So I'm trying to be like you, truth-telling, try to cut to the root of the problem, really talk about things from an angle that I don't think other people want to talk about, and kind of push the envelope and get people to really think about it. So it's a political commentary show. There isn't anyone like me doing a political commentary show of this type. So I'm hoping that people see it and want to support it and help us kind of build kind of following, just kind of like what you're doing. And I think it's important for people of color like us and directly impacted communities to have their own media platforms where they can speak about things from their own frame, from their own perspectives.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Because everything else doesn't represent us, and if they do bring someone on that represent us, they would do what we call cooning. Selling out, your Sheriff David Clarks and your Charles Barkleys and your Stacey Trash and all them other ones. They like to do the things they're doing on those different networks. But we'll put a link up, on the page, and definitely can link people to your show. Well, before we wrap this up, what do you feel about Bernie is out now? Are you still going to be involved with the political process? Because we definitely don't want Trump in. I mean, I see Dr. Jill Stein has popped up now, kind of saying similar things to Bernie Sanders. What is your opinion on that? I'm not telling you to tell people where to vote, but what is your opinion on that situation since Bernie's kind of out and Hillary haven't picked him up as vice president?
I mean, I'm just like everybody else. I was just as disappointed when Bernie chose to endorse Hillary before the convention. But I'll tell you this, I don't regret supporting Bernie. I watched young people across this country that have never been part of any political process get down and organize in their communities, not because they were organizing for an old white man, but they were organizing based on values and principles that Bernie Sanders brought to the table: inequality, criminal justice reform, healthcare reform, really allowing people to just come in and talk about money out of politics. He was paid for by the people, didn't take super PAC money. That was important to me. So what I'm doing right now is really taking the momentum that he built and the campaign helped us build amongst Muslim organizers around the country and allow people to continue to organize on local issues in their community. And I tell people, look, you don't have to like Hillary Clinton. You don't have to like Donald Trump. You don't have to like Dr. Jill Stein, but you got to remember the down ballot. So if you don't want to focus on the presidential because your man is out of the race, there are still members of Congress, Senate, state elected officials, local city council members, and that's where I'm focusing my efforts. I'm focusing my efforts right now on down ballot candidates.
That's good because definitely understand the local elections have a lot to affect on us. Your local DAs, your judges, your local
Absolutely.
sheriff, your mayor, city council. That's where your vote is most powerful at.
All
And
politics is local.
yes,
That's what they
yes.
say.
And the one thing that happened today, I just got across the email that the federal court has struck down Texas voter ID laws. So, because that to me that's unconstitutional. You shouldn't be able to have to force someone to have an ID to vote because they want to disenfranchise minority voters when they do that.
Absolutely.
So, Linda, like I said, I want to thank you for definitely joining us today.
Thank
Definitely spreading that knowledge from someone within the Muslim community. And I definitely see you doing a lot out there. Keep, fighting the good fight, no matter
you,
what.
brother.
And, we'll definitely probably just see the end of this as we keep fighting. Because, white supremacy, from what I see, Linda, is actually falling. And they trying to hold on to it as much as possible, but it's just, I'm sorry, it's just not gonna hold on. So we have to embrace the America what they so-called say it's supposed to be, right?
Mm-hmm. We're going to be the majority soon, so we're going to have to start acting like it.
All right. So everyone, make sure you go over to Linda's show. And Linda, what is your social media for people that want to maybe come speak to you or join your page?
Yeah, so my Facebook page is public. It's just my first and last name, Linda Sarsour, and on Twitter, it's just my first initial, L Sarsour. So if you ever want to know what we're thinking, what's going on in the Muslim community, what are the stories that are impacting us, just join me on Twitter there, and feel free to at me, ask me any questions. I'm happy to have any conversation.
All right, so make sure you check out Linda on social media as well, also her show. And if you're in the area and you find out she's public speaking, go visit and listen to what she has to say. I've been watching from the background, and she speaks the truth because I don't bring people on here that do not speak the truth. So Linda, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, brother.